Hey guys, tonight we drift back, way back, into a world where the sun is a god. The sand gets in places you didn't know you had, and the river doesn't just give life, it decides who lives and who starves. You're in Egypt now. Not the glossy postcard kind with pyramids and camel rides, but the real Egypt, hot, harsh, and absolutely relentless. You're lying on a woven mat inside a home made of sun-dried mud. The air smells like damp straw and sweat. Your skin is gritty with dust. Outside, the Nile murmurs in the dark, and the wind carries the faint bray of donkeys. A cat darts through the doorway. Not a cuddly pet, more like a half-feral rodent assassin with divine job security. Tonight, you're nobody special. You're not royalty or a priest. You're not a builder of monuments, not yet. You're just you. But the world outside your door is ancient, aching, and very, very alive. And hard. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to the smell of damp earth and crushed grain, the way you always do. Morning in ancient Egypt isn't a gentle affair. The light punches through cracks in your wall, and the sun wastes no time heating the mud bricks. You wipe your eyes, stretch your limbs, and feel that familiar soreness. You're 15, maybe 16. Your spine already creaks like an old wagon. That's what happens when you grow up hauling jugs of river water and grinding barley into meal with a stone. Your feet are cracked and calloused. Your tunic, woven from flax, is coarse, itchy, and stained from last week's fish cuts. But it's dry. Dry counts as clean. Outside, the narrow dirt alley between homes is already alive. Dogs scavenge scraps. A neighbor is yelling about a missing goose. Somewhere, a flute wails out a half-tune. You step into the sun and blink. It's not even 7 a.m., and you're already sweating. The Nile sparkles in the distance. Wide and slow and sacred. It gives everything. Crops, fish, mud for bricks, water for drinking, and sometimes a bloated goat carcass or two. The river rises and falls like a moody god, and the entire country dances to its rhythm. When the flood is generous, you eat. When it's not, well, you've seen what a bad season looks like. Last year, a drought meant less barley. Less barley meant higher taxes. Higher taxes meant your uncle had to sell his boat. No boat, no fishing. No fishing, no food. He died last winter, froze to death under a reed blanket. In Egypt, yes, it gets cold, especially when you're hungry. You trudge toward the fields, passing a small shrine, a crude sandstone image of Hapi, the god of the Nile. You mutter a quick prayer, not because you're devout, but because, what if? What if this is the day the gods are listening? What if skipping the prayer means stepping on a viper in the reeds? The field is waiting for you. Muddy, sticky, and already swarming with flies. Your hands grip the wooden hoe like it's part of your body. You work in a rhythm that's been passed down for centuries. Chop, pull, bend, repeat. Your back is screaming by midday. You think about the cold beer back home. Well, beer is generous. It's more like a thick, sour barley smoothie with the consistency of wet bread. But it's yours, and it cools your throat just long enough to make you forget the blisters. A priest walks by on the causeway, robes pristine, shaved head gleaming. He doesn't look at you. Why would he? You're covered in mud, sweat, and bits of worm. He has papyrus scrolls to read, ceremonies to perform. You have turnips to plant. Hierarchy is baked into the land like heat into the stone. You don't question it, mostly. That night, you eat with your family. Barley cakes, dried fish, and onions that sting your eyes more than your pride. The meal is quiet. Everyone is tired. Your little sister sneezes, and your mother makes a sign against disease. Illness spreads fast in villages where water, hands, and food all mingle in the same clay pots. You lie on your back in the dust and watch the stars blink to life. They seem closer here, like gods peeking through a cracked ceiling. You don't know about galaxies or physics. You know that Orion was a hunter, and the stars are his weapons. You know Ra sails his golden boat across the sky by day, and through the underworld by night. You hope he remembers your name? Historians still argue whether the average Egyptian really believed all this, or whether they played along because everyone else did. But in your world, the line between belief and survival is thin. Tomorrow, you'll rise again, hoe again, pray again. There's no weekend, no vacation, just the rhythm of water, mud, sun, and breath. And this is the good part. You haven't been conscripted. You haven't lost a child. You haven't seen your harvest rot in the sun, or your bones crack under a pyramid block. Yet. But the Nile doesn't care about your luck. The river gives, and the river takes. And tonight, as the frogs sing in the marsh, and the stars hum their silent lullaby, you sleep in the arms of a land that is older than memory and harsher than myth. You're not dreaming. That gurgling sound, that's real. It's the Nile creeping up faster than expected this year. Again, you jolt awake to the slosh of wet clay beneath your mat. Your father is already outside, thigh-deep in floodwater, trying to drag a bundle of reeds out of the current before they drift off to join someone else's farm. The water smells sharp, rich with silt, fish, decay, and the ghosts of last season's miscalculations. Flood season is supposed to be a blessing. Supposed to be. The Nile floods every year, predictably unpredictable. Some years, it trickles. Crops dry in the sun, and famine spreads like bad gossip. Other years, it surges. That's what this year is shaping up to be. You haven't seen the boundary stones since last week. If the water rises just another handspan, it'll reach the grain stores. Again, you grab a makeshift paddle, a broken chair leg with a flat end, and help bail out the goat shelter. The goats scream like they've just read the flood forecast. You scream too, internally. If the animals drown, your family loses its main trade item. If the barley gets wet, the taxman still expects it dry. That's the magic of ancient Egyptian accounting. Rain damage is your problem, not the kingdom's. Back in the house, your mother is trying to keep the hearth fire alive using soggy palm fronds and curses. She's losing on both fronts. The walls drip. The floor is sludge. And there's a toad in your bed that refuses to leave. Outside, the water is silver and gold, catching early sunlight like it's showing off. The scene is almost beautiful, until you remember it's your front yard underwater. Again, you and your neighbors build a temporary levee out of mud bricks and prayer. Mostly bricks. Your hands blister before noon. You're sunburnt, soaked, and stung by insects that apparently came with the floodwater. Just to remind you who's really in charge. Someone jokes that maybe this is the god's way of giving everyone a bath. Another man mutters that this happened last time, when the priests forgot to bless the canals. Then they all stop laughing, because that man's roof did collapse last year. People remember. Historians still argue whether average Egyptians blamed natural disasters on their rulers or on the gods themselves. But you know how it works. If you're lucky, it's the god's fault. If you're not, it's yours. Either way, there's no insurance claim. Just more hauling, more mud, and maybe an extra offering at the local shrine. You trudge to the granary in town. What's left of it? It sits on stilts, which is a fancy way of saying the water only sometimes gets in. The keeper, a sour man with bad breath and worse teeth, lets you inside to check your family's remaining stores. You're missing 2 baskets of millet. He shrugs. Rats, he says unconvincingly. You suspect they weren't the kind with tails. This is the rhythm of your life. Flood, drain, hope, repeat. The Nile is both savior and saboteur. It's not evil. It's just busy. It's been carving valleys and drowning civilizations since before your ancestors knew how to name the stars. There's a phrase your grandfather used. The Nile gives, the Nile takes, and sometimes it takes your sandals. You used to laugh. Now you're barefoot and wondering if that counts as a curse or a metaphor. Mid-afternoon brings a different kind of trouble. A pair of royal surveyors, men in clean linen and bored expressions, arrive to check the flood levels and adjust tax estimates accordingly. One of them carries a measuring rope. The other just squints and makes notes on a scroll. You stand beside your father and try not to breathe too loudly. They point at the watermark on your house wall. One mutters something about above average. You already know what that means. More tax. Because clearly, if you've had more water, you've had more crop, right? Right. You want to scream, or maybe just shake their nice sandals full of frogs. But instead, you nod and bow and thank them for their visit like the good subject you are. Because if you make trouble, you disappear into a ditch. Not metaphorically. That evening, you and your siblings help rescue your fishing net from the marsh. It's tangled with weeds, leeches, and what might once have been a chicken. You untangle it by moonlight, fingers raw, clothes damp, throat dry. No one speaks. No one needs to. That silence? That's Egypt too. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of exhaustion. You sit beside your sister, staring at the water like it owes you an apology. A heron lands nearby. It's beautiful. Then it steals one of your fish and flies off like a feathered aristocrat. You laugh. Because if you don't laugh, you'll cry. And crying makes your face salty. And there's already enough salt in the Nile. Back home, your mother serves what she calls soup. It's more of a hot puddle with onion skin and barley bits. But it's warm. You eat it with gratitude so practiced, it might as well be a religion. You fall asleep on a dry patch of floor, curled up like a cat, half listening to the croaking chorus of frogs and the whisper of water trying to sneak back in. Tomorrow, you'll dig drainage ditches. You'll gather reeds. You'll count sacks that aren't missing. Again, the gods may grant favor, but they don't do plumbing. And if this is what a good flood year looks like, you can't wait for the bad one. You're woken by the thud of hooves and the scent of something foreign. Polished leather, musky perfume, and arrogance. A procession is passing through your village. At first, you think it's a noble's caravan or a tax collector's visit. But no, this is grander. The dust is thicker. The guards are shinier. The horses are fatter. And the crowd? Silent, staring, part fear, part awe. Then you see it. A golden bark carried on the shoulders of sweating men, their necks bowed, their knees trembling. Atop it sits a figure reclining under a sunshade, dressed in white linen so fine it could be mistaken for cloud. This is Pharaoh, or at least one of his many sons. Maybe a cousin? Doesn't matter. He smells like power and melon rind. He doesn't see you. Not really. His eyes float above the crowd, glazed and distant, like he's bored of earth altogether, which he probably is. His sandals alone cost more than your father's house, and he owns hundreds of sandals. He tosses something, a bronze amulet, into the crowd. A boy dives for it. A girl scrapes her elbow trying to reach it first. You stay still. What would you do with a royal trinket anyway? Sell it? That's a great way to disappear. The royal procession stirs something old in you. Maybe admiration, maybe revulsion, probably both. This isn't just a parade. It's a message. You exist. He reigns. Do not forget the order of things. Historians still argue whether average Egyptians adored their kings or merely endured them. The answer, as always, is it depends. On the king, on the tax, on the weak. You walk away before the dust settles. You've seen enough to understand. In this world, power flows from the top down like the Nile in flood season, and you're living somewhere near the muddy bottom. Later that week, the tax collector arrives. Not the smooth type with a papyrus scroll and a polite smile. No, this one's got guards and a whip. You already know what's coming. Your family owes 6 jars of grain and 2 bundles of linen. You have 5 jars and no linen. Your mother offers a copper trinket instead, her wedding necklace. The collector squints. He says it'll do, for now. He leaves with half your supplies and a casual warning. Be ready next season, or be gone. You stare at the doorway long after he leaves. You want to hate him, but you mostly feel tired. You try to imagine what Pharaoh eats for breakfast. Pomegranate? Roasted duck? A dozen honey cakes arranged like a lotus flower? You had a barley lump soaked in leftover onion water. You once heard a story, probably made up, that Pharaoh Thutmose III refused to walk on regular ground because he believed the dirt would steal his divinity. So his servants laid linen paths ahead of him wherever he went. You try laying a path of linen in your mind. It ends halfway across your family's dirt floor. That same night, a storyteller comes to the village square. He's old, missing several teeth, and covered in tattoos from a lifetime of temples, wars, and wine. He tells tales of Ramses the Great, of battles where the Nile turned red, probably exaggeration, and of pharaohs who spoke to gods like they were pen pals. The children sit wide-eyed. You're not a child anymore, but you listen anyway. He ends with a tale about a poor farmer who was so clever and honest that he caught the attention of the king, who made him a judge. Everyone claps. You don't, because no farmer you know ever becomes a judge. They become dust, fertilizer, or another nameless line in a tax ledger. But it's a nice story. Afterward, the storyteller passes around a bowl for coins. Most drop in a lentil or two. It's all they can spare. Your father once told you that Egypt is like a beehive. The pharaoh is the queen. The priests are the drones. The rest of you? Workers. Buzzing. Busy. Replaceable. You're not sure if that was meant to be comforting. By morning, the village is buzzing again. No bees, just people. Chopping, sweeping, bartering. You barter 2 eggs for a chunk of salt-dried fish and a single fig that's more bruised than fruit. You see a man with a feather fan, probably from the royal caravan, now strapped to a poor merchant's back. Nothing trickles down quite like discarded luxury. You spot one of the bark carriers from earlier. He's limping, knees swollen, his shoulder bruised black. You wonder if he got to keep the linen cushion, or if even that was reclaimed. That evening, your sister whispers a wild idea. What if you left? Went south? Joined the Nubian traders? You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because imagining another life is more dangerous than the taxman. In Egypt, your life is not yours. It belongs to your family, your fields, and your god king. Even your name is a gift from the state. Your birth was registered by a scribe who probably spelled it wrong. But that spelling is now sacred. Lose your name, lose your afterlife. So, you stay. And tomorrow, you rise before the sun and return to the fields. You walk barefoot past yesterday's royal footprints, already washed away by dew and dung. The pharaoh? He'll be in his palace, reclining on polished stone, surrounded by dancers, gold and wine. And maybe, just maybe, he'll pause for 1 second and think of the boy with cracked feet who saw him pass. But probably not. You're kneeling in dust again, this time not in a field, but at the mouth of a limestone quarry. The sun isn't just shining, it's attacking. Your tunic sticks to your back. Your knees are raw from the stone. Your job today? Move rocks from one side of a hill to the other. Tomorrow you'll move them back, or maybe just closer to the cart. Welcome to state labor. You didn't exactly volunteer. The local official came around last week, reading a decree from the palace. Glorious Pharaoh needs strong hands for the temple of the sun. You were on the list. Everyone was on the list, except the sick, the dying, and the people who could pay not to be. Spoiler, that's not you. You arrived 3 days ago with a dozen others, packed into an ox cart with nothing but a water skin and a reed mat. The foreman met you with a smirk and a stick. You learned quickly which one he used more. Today, your assignment is stone hauler, not cutter, not polisher. Those are skilled jobs. You're the guy who grunts and lifts and hopes the chunk doesn't crush your foot or your spirit. The stone is hot to the touch. You almost drop it, but the foreman's eyes are on you. So you carry it to the sled and set it down with a thud, over and over, for hours. Your breath comes shallow. Your shoulders ache. Your palms are blistered through the cloth. Someone vomits in the heat. Someone else faints. The work doesn't stop. Historians still argue whether Egypt's great temples were built by slaves or conscripted laborers. Standing here, shirt sticking to your back, you're not sure the distinction matters. You share a tent with 5 other boys. At night, you lie shoulder to shoulder, coughing from limestone dust and snoring like a herd of exhausted goats. The tent smells like sweat, mold, and despair. No one talks much. What's the point? You're not here to make friends. You're here to endure. You fall asleep with a rock under your back. You wake up with a scar you didn't have the night before. On day 4, a scribe visits the quarry. Not for you, of course. He's checking measurements, inspecting inscriptions. He carries a stylus and looks like he's never lifted anything heavier than a date cake. You watch as he frowns at a wall where someone carved a picture of a cat chasing a sunbeam. Vandalism, he mutters. But you smile at it. It's the first sign of humor you've seen all week. The work continues. A pulley snaps. A cart rolls over a man's leg. He screams until they carry him away. No one says his name. The next morning, a new boy is assigned his spot. You start keeping time by the bruises on your arms. One for each day, one for each stone. You've forgotten what your mother's voice sounds like, but you remember her barley cakes. You remember the way she folded your clothes with care, even when they were rags. You daydream that you'll finish your term, go home, and find the flood has been kind, that your goat gave birth to twins, that your sister is still laughing, that you're still whole. But the foreman's voice snaps you back. "Faster, worm!" he shouts. He calls everyone worm. It's the only joke he knows. A scorpion skitters past your foot. You pause. It pauses. You have a moment of mutual respect. Then it vanishes into a crack in the rock. You envy it. At dusk, the stone begins to glow. Not metaphorically, actual glow. The heat leaves it reluctantly, like a god refusing to let go. Your muscles shake. Your knees tremble. You're scared to stop because the body next to you did stop, and now he's not moving. The overseer kicks him once, twice. No response. "Dead," someone mutters. The work doesn't stop. There's a myth among the laborers. If you die on the job and your body stays in the quarry, your soul is trapped here forever. No tomb, no afterlife, just endless dragging in the heat. You don't know if it's true, but you dig a little deeper tonight. Scrape out a shallow hollow for the man who didn't get up. You lay 3 small stones on his chest. Not a real burial, but it's something. And something, in Egypt, is everything. The gods are picky. Forget one rite, one chant, one grain of incense, and your soul gets stuck between worlds, chewing on dust. That night, you hear laughter, real laughter. A few boys are whispering about the foreman's crooked eye and how it twitches when he's mad. One does an impression. It's perfect. You all nearly choke, trying not to laugh too loud. You fall asleep, smiling. And for a few seconds, you're not in a quarry. You're home, barefoot in warm mud. Your sister beside you, singing a song about a crocodile that ate a priest. But then morning comes. The bell clangs. Your shoulders scream. The sun rises like a punishment, and you begin again. Because in Egypt, the stones don't move themselves. The gods may be eternal, but their temples run on broken backs and calloused hands. The trouble with being poor in ancient Egypt isn't just the heat, the hunger, or the taxes. It's that every minor injury carries a death sentence in waiting. You wake up to a stinging pain in your big toe. You kicked something yesterday, maybe a stray stone, maybe your own bad luck, and now your toe is red, swollen, and warm. That's not good. You know enough to recognize that much. But what do? You limp to the village healer. She's 80 if she's a day, with a voice like dry reeds and a house that smells like old garlic and damp linen. She pokes at your toe with a twig, mutters about bad air, then rubs a grayish paste over the nail. You don't ask what's in it. You never ask what's in it. The answer is always disappointing. She wraps your toe in linen, ties it with a bit of string, and whispers a few words to Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of war and disease. You thank her, give her half a fish, and hobble away. You hope the swelling goes down. You hope the rot stays out. Because the truth is, Egyptian medicine is a blend of brilliance and absolute horror. On the one hand, Egyptians invented surgical tools. They wrote diagnostic scrolls. They knew the heart had vessels. They even performed rudimentary brain surgeries. Read skull holes. On the other hand, they also stuffed wounds with honey, dung, moldy bread, crocodile fat, and occasionally, prayers. Not always in that order. Historians still argue whether these treatments worked or if patients simply got lucky. But you're not feeling lucky right now. You're feeling a lot of pressure in your toe and fear. You remember your cousin cut his hand on a shard of pottery. It turned black by week's end. He couldn't work. Then he couldn't eat. Then he just stopped being there. You try not to think about it. Instead, you go to work in the fields, dragging your injured toe behind you like a guilty secret. Every step feels like walking on hot coals and shame. Your father notices but says nothing. There's no point. Crops won't plant themselves, and pain isn't a luxury most can afford. At midday, you take shelter under a fig tree. It's not much, but it throws a thin shadow on the dirt. You sip warm water from a goatskin and nibble a date. Then, a bee stings your forearm. Of course it does. Now your arm is red too. Excellent. You remember a folk cure. Smear mud mixed with goat urine and chant the bee's name backward. No one actually knows the bee's name, so this remedy has a low success rate. You settle for spitting on the sting and hoping the gods are bored enough to intervene. That evening, your neighbor tells you about a man in town who got bit by a snake and survived. He drank 7 cups of beer and sang to Anubis until dawn, she says. You nod politely and limp away. Later, your mother boils some herbs, garlic, onion, carob bark, and something that smells like burned fingernails. She pours the brew into a cracked clay cup and hands it to you like a gift. You drink it like a dare. It does not help. By nightfall, your toe is a tiny, throbbing temple of rage. You try to distract yourself by counting stars, but the pain keeps coming in waves, like tiny, angry priests worshiping your foot with fire. You finally fall asleep and dream that you're a cat limping through a golden temple where every pillar is shaped like a toe. They all hurt. One of them screams. You wake up screaming. The next day, the healer checks the wound, frowns, says something about heat inside the blood. She offers to lance it with a fishbone. You agree, because what choice do you have? She heats the bone over a candle, mutters a prayer to Imhotep, patron of medicine and architecture, because why not, and jabs it into your toe. You howl. It smells like burning flesh. You nearly pass out. But then, relief. Pressure gone. Pain. Duller. The healer wraps your toe again and hands you a charm. A carved beetle, small and green, inscribed with nonsense symbols. For protection, she says. You don't believe in beetle magic, but you wear it anyway. Because, in a world where fish bones are surgical tools and sewage water runs near the bakery, you take all the help you can get. You limp home, victorious. You survived another battle against the kind of wound that wouldn't even get a bandage in the future. You lie on your mat and exhale. For now, the danger has passed. Then your little brother sneezes on you, and you realize the real enemy is everywhere. In the water, in the air, in the mud, in your own family's lungs. Still, you close your eyes and whisper, thanks to every god you can think of, even the obscure ones, even the ones who probably aren't listening, because you're still alive. And in Egypt, That's half the battle. You're not supposed to be here. Not in the grand hall. Not under the sandstone columns. Not breathing in the heavy scent of frankincense and crushed lotus. But here you are, barefoot, underdressed, and absolutely stunned. It's temple cleaning day. Not worship day, not festival day, scrubbing day. You've been conscripted with a handful of other teens from your village to assist in sacred maintenance, which is just a fancy way of saying clean bird droppings off sacred statues without offending the gods. The Karnak temple looms above you like a sleeping beast, vast, shadowed, humming with a silence so deep it echoes. The hieroglyphs glare down from the walls like divine surveillance. You're not sure if they're judging you, protecting you, or just recording how many times you sneeze in the incense. This place isn't for people like you. It's for priests and scribes and pharaohs, for gods. And yet here you are, holding a rag that smells like goat soap, inches away from a 20-foot statue of Amun-Ra. You look up at his face, stoic, eternal, and a little smug. The eyes seem to follow you. You whisper, "Sorry," before wiping a suspicious crust off his foot. Around you, other workers are sweeping, polishing, mumbling quiet prayers. No one dares speak too loud. This isn't just a building. It's sacred geography, a literal axis between heaven and earth. You're standing in the divine equivalent of a royal inbox. One misstep, and you might be turned into a beetle in your next life. You glance toward the inner sanctum, the naos. You're not allowed in there. Almost no one is. That's where the statue of the god lives. Not a metaphorical lives. The actual, literal statue is treated as a living god. Bathed, dressed, fed. Historians still argue whether these statues were truly seen as divine avatars or symbolic placeholders. But to the priests here, it's real. Very real. Every morning, the high priest opens the chamber, removes the amulet-studded curtain, and wakes the god with music and perfume. That statue is never left unattended. You couldn't get in even if you wanted to, which, to be fair, you don't. You're already nervous enough just being near the outer walls. A priest passes by, frowning. His robes are whiter than your teeth. His scent is equal parts resin, pride, and boiled onion. He glances at your hands. You scrub harder. He moves on. You breathe. Later, you're assigned to sweep the outer colonnade. Shade pools between the giant pillars like cool syrup. You pause to admire the carvings. Pharaoh smiting enemies, gods receiving offerings, rows of captive Nubians with tiny, sad eyes. The detail is astounding. The cruelty? Casual. You feel small. Then you notice something even smaller. Graffiti. Tucked between two grand hieroglyphs is a rough carving. Just a name and a sketch of a bird with oversized legs. It's amateurish, childish. You smile. Some kids stood exactly where you are and couldn't help themselves. It's comforting. Even in the house of gods, humans leave their mark. Your supervisor catches you staring and snaps. Less staring, more scrubbing. You nod, but your mind lingers. By midday, the heat is cruel. You're lightheaded. The stone radiates warmth like an oven. One boy faints and is carried off. The priests don't pause the incense. You eat a quick lunch, flatbread, a few olives, and a sip of sour beer. You sit on the edge of a ceremonial pool. The water's too sacred to touch, so you stare at it instead. Dragonflies skim the surface. A frog croaks, unconcerned that it's trespassing in a god's bathtub. A younger girl beside you whispers, "What happens if we sneeze in the sanctuary?" You reply, We turn into scarabs. She nods solemnly. You both laugh, very quietly. You learn more than you expected that day. You learn that temple floors must be swept east to west, never the other way. That certain gods hate garlic. That offerings go stale fast, and yes, sometimes the leftover bread mysteriously ends up in workers' pockets. You learn that priests are just people, under the makeup and mystique. One dropped a jar of incense and swore like your uncle. Another pulled a beetle out of his sleeve and nearly screamed. You learn that holiness smells a lot like sweat covered by perfume. That night, your supervisor tells you to return next week. The temple needs constant tending, and you're quiet and not completely useless. It's a compliment. You walk home under a full moon, the sand cool beneath your feet. You feel different, not cleaner, not wiser, but closer to something ancient, like you've brushed shoulders with time itself. You whisper a short prayer to a god you don't fully believe in, just in case. Then you scratch your toe and wonder if the beetle charm is still working. Egypt is full of contradictions. A land where the divine lives next to the dung heap, where prayers mix with gossip, where the poorest boy scrubs the richest temple and the gods don't blink. You sleep soundly that night, dreaming of pillars taller than giants and walls that whisper stories in stone. You smell death before you see it. It's faint at first, sour, metallic, like old fish and broken promises, then stronger as you near the embalmer's quarter. You've been sent here to deliver linen, a favor for your uncle, who trades in fabric and bad jokes. You agreed, reluctantly. Now you regret everything. The embalming workshop squats behind a high wall, shaded by tamarisk trees and secrets. A priest with shaved eyebrows greets you with a nod that might mean hello or leave now. You hold out the linen. He takes it without a word. And just like that, you're in. You weren't supposed to go inside, but you are inside. And now you can't stop staring. Bodies, dozens of them, laid out on stone slabs, wrapped in partial shrouds, stuffed with herbs, packed with natron. Some are mid-process, limbs bent, mouths slack. One still wears a jeweled ring, another is missing a toe. You try not to vomit. The workers, priests, apprentices, maybe just guys with strong stomachs, move methodically. One is shaving a corpse. Another is pouring resin into an open chest cavity. A third is chatting about beer prices while removing a brain with a hooked stick. Casual, efficient, intimate. You ask nothing. You're afraid if you open your mouth, you'll let in more than air. In Egypt, death isn't the end. It's just the beginning of a very long to-do list. The soul has to journey through the underworld, face judgment, recite passwords, survive monsters, and avoid accidentally turning into a frog. And it can only do that if the body is preserved properly. No pressure. Historians still argue how widespread mummification was outside the elite. Some say only nobles could afford the full treatment. Others believe simplified versions were more common. You're standing among the full deluxe package. Gold tongue inserts, sacred oils, Book of the Dead recitations. This is Afterlife VIP access. You're handed a bundle of reeds. Help pack the natron, someone says. You hesitate, then obey. You tuck handfuls of the salty substance around a corpse's feet. It smells like a burnt desert. Your hands sting. No one tells you the man's name. Maybe they don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. The gods will know if the rituals are done right. If not, well, he'll become one of the mutt, the restless dead, wandering without name or memory. Not a ghost exactly, just unfinished. You want to ask how many of those they've seen. Instead, you listen as a priest chants over a newly wrapped mummy. The words rise and fall like waves on the Nile. You don't understand most of them, but they vibrate in your chest, ancient syllables, old power. The priest sprinkles myrrh. He whispers the deceased's name 3 times, then silence. You realize something odd. The room doesn't feel heavy. It feels careful, like a library, not a morgue, like every movement here matters. Because it does. The workers believe they're helping this soul live again, not metaphorically, literally. They're preparing him for eternity. You step back, eyes wide, heart racing. One of the apprentices offers you a date, just a regular one, no symbolism. You take it, chew in silence, and realize you haven't blinked in 10 minutes. Outside, the sun is blinding. The air smells like fresh bread and jasmine. Life. You gulp it like a man pulled from the river. That night, you tell your father what you saw. He nods, solemn. When I die, he says, wrap me fast and bury me deep. No fancy jars. Just make sure my name is said. You promise. Then realize you don't know how many names you'll have to remember. Your grandmother, your cousins, that man at the quarry. Names are everything. Names are survival. You dream of a hallway lined with stars, doors that open when whispered to, a feather on one side, a heart on the other. In the morning, you whisper your own name 3 times before stepping outside, just in case. The baby is silent, too silent. You watch your neighbor's wife, face slick with sweat, clutching the tiny bundle on her chest. The midwife, older than the village itself, leans close, whispering something. The father stands near the doorway, hands twisting the hem of his tunic, face drawn tight like leather left in the sun. You've seen enough to know what this silence means. Then, a cough, a wet, wheezy sound, a whimper. The baby shifts, gasps, and begins to cry. The mother sobs. So does the father. Even the midwife sighs, though she pretends not to. In Egypt, birth is a battlefield. And babies? Little warriors, born into a world that doesn't guarantee survival past the first moon. You've seen too many funerals that were meant to be birthdays. Seen too many jars that held ashes instead of milk. Children don't stay children long here. By age 3, they're walking, half naked, chasing chickens, and dodging donkey carts. By 5, they know how to carry water, avoid snakes, and fetch firewood. By 7, they're working. Field hands, goat wranglers, pest swatters. Play is a luxury, and luxury is reserved for gods and scribes. You remember your own childhood, barefoot mornings, dates stolen from neighbors' trees, the thrill of spotting a scarab beetle and pretending it held secrets from the afterlife. But you also remember the funerals, your older brother, the neighbor girl with eyes too big and ribs too sharp, the twins born last winter who never opened their eyes. A third of your generation gone before they learned to tie knots or pronounce pharaoh correctly. Historians still argue about Egypt's child mortality rate. Some say half of all children died before reaching adulthood. Others suggest it was lower in flood-rich regions. You don't care. You've seen the graves. You've watched mothers age 10 years in a single afternoon. There's a strange economy to grief here. No wailing, no tearing of clothes, just quiet burials, perfumed bundles, and prayers to Isis or Tauret, the hippo goddess of childbirth. She's carved into half the amulets in your village. She protects mothers and babies. When she can. Sometimes she can't. There's a story you heard once, probably temple gossip, about a priest's daughter who died during childbirth. They say he cursed the gods and shaved his head in mourning. But the next day, he was back in the temple, reciting hymns. Because grief here doesn't stop time. It fits into time, slips between market days and planting season. You carry it like a jar of sour beer, awkward, heavy, but still warm. This week, a boy you knew from your quarry days returns home, limping, not from injury, but from losing his son, 3 months old, fever, gone by morning. You try to say something when you see him, but all you manage is a nod. He nods back. It's enough. You help dig the grave. He doesn't cry. Afterward, he places a single carnelian bead in the dirt. For the heart, he says. There's a small rite performed by some mothers in secret. They rub a paste of honey and fig on the baby's tongue while whispering blessings in 3 different dialects. Not because it works, but because not doing it feels like giving up. And no mother wants to feel complicit in fate. You hear of one woman who gave birth 10 times and buried 8 children. She walks hunched now, not from age, but from memory. Even playtime here is preparation. Children wrestle like soldiers, pretend to trade grain, mimic funerals with sticks for coffins and pebbles for amulets. You once saw 2 kids arguing over who got to play Anubis. The winner smeared ash on his face and declared, "You may now pass into the West." You laughed, then shivered. Your sister had a doll once, made of linen and clay, with painted eyes and brittle limbs. She named it Merit. She carried it everywhere. Then one day, she buried it in the garden with a flower crown. She died in childbirth, she said. You asked, "She was a doll." She answered, "She was mine." You never brought it up again. And now? You see your niece crawling, wide-eyed and curious, reaching for the edge of the reed mat. You hold your breath every time she stumbles. You pray she'll see her first flood, her first tooth, her first time pretending to be a priest or a queen. You know better than to dream too far ahead. Tonight, a boy in the village turns 8. He's gifted a slingshot, a bag of dried figs, and a necklace with a single scarab bead. He beams like a prince. He's survived. That's what birthdays mean here. You're still breathing, still growing, still here. It's worth celebrating, even if the cake is just stale bread dipped in honey. You lie down, staring at the thatched ceiling. You whisper names into the dark, not just of the living, but the gone. Because in Egypt, memory is medicine. Names are anchors, and forgetting is a second death. So you remember, and you hope. The chariot jolts hard, so hard your spine snaps like a reed, your teeth knock together, and for a moment, you're not sure whether the dust in your mouth is sand or your own enamel. You hold on, fingers white-knuckled around cracked leather reins, breath tearing in and out like a caught animal, your thoughts a mess of prayers and nausea. The wheels rattle, the wind screams, the horizon blurs into heat haze and sun glare and fear. You're not a soldier, not really, but you're dressed like one. Linen kilt stiff with sweat, a bronze dagger so blunt it's more moral support than weapon, and a wooden shield barely thicker than the table your family eats dinner on. Your breastplate slides with every jolt. Your sandals bite into your heels. Your throat tastes like panic and metal. Welcome to the war. No one asked if you wanted to come. The scribe in your village simply arrived one afternoon with a list, a wax seal, and a tone that left no room for argument. Pharaoh needed men to defend the border, to reclaim tribute, to strike fear into the hearts of foreigners. You didn't catch the details. You just remember your mother going pale, your brother offering to go instead, and being laughed at because he's 10. So here you are, somewhere near the edge of the known world, past fields you don't recognize, and mountains with names you can't pronounce. On a campaign whose destination you still aren't sure of. Canaan? Syria? Somewhere full of strangers who shout in strange tongues and sling stones with terrifying accuracy. You thought you'd be guarding a granary, maybe digging a canal. Instead, you're sweating your soul out in a convoy of chariots and carts that keep losing wheels, with 24 conscripts, 6 bored priests, a lot of flies, and one officer who seems more interested in his reflection than in logistics. War is not what the temple murals promised. Those paintings? Men with perfect hair, bronze muscles, and divine symmetry, marching in neat lines, spears raised high, faces set in noble defiance. The truth? Heatstroke, sunburn, sand in your every fold, and fear, that quiet gnawing kind, the one that hides beneath your ribs and eats your courage grain by grain. At night, you sleep in the dirt, back to back, with boys just as scared as you. You chew on dry beans and smoked fish while the older soldiers lie. One says he once speared 3 Nubians with a single throw. Another claims he dodged an arrow by sneezing at the exact right moment. They all laugh. You pretend to. Then you stare into the fire, the way your father did when his joints ached too much to stand. You wonder if your sister remembered to water the fig trees, if your dog still waits for you at the edge of the village, if anyone has carved your name into the family wall. If not your name, maybe your story. The general gives speeches every few days, booming declarations full of gods and glory and vengeance for insults you've never heard of. His voice is deep and commanding, but to you it sounds like thunder without rain. All you hear is, "Don't die like an idiot." You try. You get used to things. Sand in your teeth, blisters between your toes, the constant smell of sweat, urine, and incense. The priests are everywhere, sprinkling holy water, chanting hymns, screaming blessings like war cries. "May Montu strike down your enemies," one yells. You nod. You hope Montu is listening. You hope anyone is. Then the day comes. The day the war stops being stories. You don't march into battle. You fall into it. 1 minute, you're refilling your water skin. The next, trumpets wail like wounded cattle, and arrows hiss past your head like angry bees. Your commander shouts something about a flank. You're not sure what a flank is, but you assume it's currently being stabbed. You drop the water skin. You raise your shield. You breathe. You charge. Everything blurs. A man swings something at your face. You duck. You stab. You miss. Someone slams into your shoulder. You drop your dagger. You pick up a rock. Your shield splinters. Blood soaks your tunic. Not yours. Maybe not. You don't know how long it lasts. You lose time. You lose everything but motion. Swing, duck, run, repeat. When it's over, you find yourself sitting on a rocky slope. Alive. Flies buzz over the fallen. You blink. You breathe. A boy nearby clutches his arm, eyes wide, whispering for his mother. You recognize him. He's from your convoy. He said he was 17. He looks 10. The priest arrives. He touches your forehead with oil. May your soul stay in your body, he murmurs. You don't ask if it was trying to leave. Historians argue whether Egyptian soldiers fought in perfect formations or ragged mobs. Some claim elite battalions drilled with precision. Others say it was all a polished mess. Order on the records, chaos in the dust. You've lived it. You know the truth is somewhere in between, like everything in Egypt. A little order, a lot of pretending. Eventually, the war ends. Not with a cheer, just with less noise. You return home thinner, quieter. Your thighs bear a new scar. Your eyes don't always focus when people talk to you. You flinch at the sound of oxen carts. You wake at night with your hands clenched, gripping invisible reins. No one asks what happened. You're handed a sack of grain and a handshake, like you've come back from a pilgrimage instead of a slaughter. Your mother cries when she sees you. Your brother asks if you killed anyone. You say, no. You don't elaborate. You hang your shield on the wall. Your little cousin steals it and pretends to be Pharaoh. You don't stop him. Let him play, while he still thinks war is just shouting and parades. You go back to farming. You pretend the dreams are just dreams, that the spear in your hands was never real, that the boy on the slope wasn't crying for someone you couldn't become. But at night, sometimes, you feel hoofbeats pounding in your chest. You hear the distant cry of a trumpet. You smell the blood, and you whisper a prayer, not to return a hero, not to win a new war, just not to be called again, because you've seen glory, and it limps. You stare at the river, still, dark, flat as polished obsidian. It stretches out before you like a god sleeping with one eye open. Somewhere beneath that surface, something stirs. You know it's there. You've seen it. Once, maybe twice. Just a ripple that shouldn't have been. A glint of something greenish, moving too smoothly to be driftwood. Too slow to be wind. Too quiet to be harmless. Your cousin said it was a stick. Your uncle said it was a water spirit. You said nothing. Because you know better than to name the things that move under the Nile. Whether it's a crocodile, a hippo, or a curse, it doesn't matter. The Nile doesn't care what it is. The Nile takes what it wants, and then forgets. You dip a toe in anyway, because it's hot, because you're filthy, because your arms smell like fish and dust and whatever that sticky paste was beneath the market table. Because bathing isn't optional when your job includes hauling manure, scaling fish, and sweeping alleyways most people pretend don't exist. The water greets you like a friend you shouldn't trust. Cool, slow, deceptively gentle. You step deeper. This is how most drownings begin. The Nile is everything to you. It is your bathtub, your drinking bowl, your road, your border, your grave. It is the spine of Egypt, its vertebrae, winding from the heart of darkness to the mouth of the sea. Without it, there's no grain, no temples, no cities, no you. And yet, every time you touch it, you remember. It's also a predator. You've heard the stories. Your friend nearly drowned last spring when a hippo rose like a thundercloud from the reeds. The boat flipped, screaming, water, blood. He came back missing a tooth and carrying a silence that hasn't left him since. Now he won't even say the word papyrus. Won't walk near the shoreline alone. Then there was the fisherman who relieved himself in the reeds and was dragged under mid-sentence. They say all they found was one sandal, and a very distressed goose. The goose never laid eggs again, but you still bathe. Because you have to. Because everyone does. Because the river is not optional. It is ritual. It is survival. It is the first and last chapter in every Egyptian story. You keep your eyes on the reeds anyway, because the monsters here don't all wear fangs. Some are small, microscopic, silent. You've heard of the blood curse, the one where men begin urinating red and boys swell like frogs before rain. You've seen a child lose his appetite, then his balance, then the ability to speak. The elders said it was bad air, a curse, a punishment. But the old midwife muttered the word under her breath. Bilharzia. Historians still debate whether Egyptians knew what caused waterborne disease. Some evidence suggests they understood purification, copper jugs, settled water, sacred incense. Others say it was all habit and holy hope, a culture shaped by trial and divine error. You just don't drink from the river. You've seen what happens to goats that do. Today, you're unloading fish, tilapia, catfish, one unfortunate specimen that smells like it fought with a shoe and lost. The mud sucks at your ankles as you wrestle the slippery bodies into baskets. And then, a shadow. It glides beneath the boat, long, heavy, slow. It doesn't ripple. It glides, like it owns the water, like it is the water. You freeze. The boy beside you doesn't even notice. You glance at the boatman. He's watching too. He nods. Just once. Big one, he mutters. Maybe two. He doesn't say the word crocodile. He doesn't have to. Later, as you rinse your hands in the shallows, you spot one, sunbathing on the far bank, mouth open, eyes closed, the picture of smug contentment. It looks like it's smiling. You want to throw a rock. You don't. Because in Egypt, crocodiles aren't just animals. They're embodied gods, avatars of Sobek, the deity of strength, virility, and divine fury. There are entire temples carved for him, incense burned, hymns sung, offerings placed at his scaly feet. Priests wear his face on amulets. They whisper his name over war drums and childbirth alike. And yes, there are mummified crocodiles. You've seen one, wrapped in linen, buried like a prince, teeth bared as if even death didn't dare shut its mouth. Which means, technically, when you're afraid of a crocodile, you're afraid of a god. You offer a quick prayer, not because you believe, because belief is complicated, but because fear is easy. And then there are the hippos. You've never seen one up close, and you hope you never do. Fat, fast, furious. They look like wine jars with legs. People laugh at them until they run, until they bite, until they capsize a boat or destroy an entire harvest by trampling a field in one night. Farmers curse them. Mothers fear them. Priests worship them. Taweret, the goddess of fertility and protection, has the face of a hippo, the tail of a crocodile, and the feet of a lion. She guards mothers in labor, drives away nightmares, and depending on your relationship with her, might crush you with joy or with indifference. So you don't speak ill of hippos. You don't speak much at all. You dry your hands on your tunic. A leech clings to your ankle. You peel it off, frown, and toss it back like an uninvited guest. The Nile doesn't just feed. It listens. You're not sure to what or why. But sometimes, standing by its banks, you feel it watching. Not like a person watches, like the sky does, or the desert. Wide, silent, patient. Tonight, you will dream of the river. Not the kind you swam in as a child. Not the blue ribbon drawn on school tablets. The real river. the one that coils across the land like a great serpent, half asleep, half awake, the one that feeds 1,000 villages and buries 1,000 more, the one that whispers songs too old for language. And in the dream, you'll hear it call your name, not loudly, softly, curiously, as if testing the taste of it. And in the dream, you will not answer. Not because you don't hear it, but because you're not sure what happens if you do. So tomorrow, as you pass the banks again, you will whisper your name into the reeds, just in case. Because in Egypt, to be remembered is power. And to be remembered by the Nile, that might be the beginning of a miracle or the end of a story. You wake to smoke, not fire smoke, incense. Thick, sweet, cloying. It finds your nose like it has business there, like it has your name written in lotus-scented script. You cough once, blink twice, and squint into the golden smear of dawn creeping through the shuttered doorway. The sandals give it away. That unmistakable slap of soles on limestone, hurried and deliberate, echoing like someone's late for their own funeral. Festival day. Again. You've lost count of how many this season. 1 for Ra, probably 3. Isis? At least 2. Hathor always gets music and red wine. Bastid's people bring out the cats, naturally. Bess gets the noisy, half-mad dancers with the drums and the backwards masks. But this one, this morning, has heaviness to it. The kind of drumming that doesn't encourage dancing, but silence, reverence. Gold headdresses bob past your doorway. Linen robes whisper in the dust. Someone shouts for order. Definitely Amun. You sit up, scratch your scalp, and pull on your least wrinkled tunic. It's still stained. Last festival's pomegranate wine. But you convince yourself it looks intentional. A symbol, maybe. Or a story. The village is buzzing already. Children dart through the crowd with painted sticks, chasing dogs and each other. Traders shout prices, elbows flying. Someone's already lost a goat. Someone else claims it's divine punishment. You step over a spilled basket of onions and nod to a group of elders huddled in the shade like mossy stones. No one makes eye contact. Everyone's too focused. The air crackles, the way it does before a sandstorm or a miracle. You follow the pull toward the temple square. Festival days are complicated. There's joy, sure, laughter, music, free bread, honey, new gossip, new clothes. On the other hand, there are expectations, rituals, drunken uncles who challenge priests to wrestling matches. A friend of yours once tried to seduce a temple acolyte and got blessed with a bruised lip for his trouble. You never know what version of the gods you'll get today, the generous kind or the hungry ones. The procession begins. The crowd hushes. Priests walk in perfect formation, linen robes so white they seem to hum in the sunlight. Their chants begin low, like distant thunder, rhythmic and ancient. The cadence vibrates something inside your chest that you didn't know existed. Behind them, the bark. Not a boat for water, but a boat for the god. Carved wood, inlaid gold, shaped like a crescent moon wrapped in sunbeams. The god's statue rests inside, cloaked in secrecy. No one sees it, not unless you're a high priest, a pharaoh, or dead. And still, everyone bows. Even the old man who claims to believe in nothing bows. Even the goat stops bleeding. You do too. Not because you're sure it matters, but because not bowing feels dangerous. Someone places a lotus flower in your hand. You don't see who. You tuck it behind your ear. It smells like dust and rain and papyrus, like memory. Historians still argue what these festivals were for. Were they religious rituals? State-sponsored distractions? Social bonding exercises? Probably all three. In a land where food could run out and rulers could forget you existed, a festival was a kind of medicine, a reminder, you matter. The gods see you. The world still spins in its proper rhythm. You follow the crowd deeper into the square. Vendors sell beer in clay mugs, sesame flatbread, little charms shaped like scarabs. You buy one of each. The bread is warm. The beer is flat. The scarab sparkles in the sunlight like it knows something you don't. At the temple gates, acrobats tumble for the nobles, juggling knives, balancing jugs on their heads, contorting like reeds in floodwater. You pretend to watch them, but really, you're watching the priests. One of them is crying, not sobbing, not wailing, just crying. Silent, dignified tears slipping down his cheeks as he grips the sacred staff. His face doesn't move otherwise, just his eyes. You wonder why. You wonder what the gods demand in exchange for devotion. The hymn begins. You know this one. Your grandmother used to hum it while grinding grain. You always thought it was just a tune. Now it echoes from temple walls in a chorus of voices, sacred and immense. You hum along, quietly. No one notices. But maybe the gods do. Then, something unexpected. A dove lands on the bark. Right on top. The crowd gasps. Priests murmur. Someone drops a censer. Is it a sign? A good omen? A nuisance? The bird flaps, poops, and flies off. Everyone pretends it was deeply symbolic. The day continues. The streets pulse with energy. Sistrums shake, metal and bone, bright and clattering. A sound like rain and snakes and celebration. You eat more honey cake. You drink more beer. You flirt with a potter's daughter who calls you clay-brained and then laughs. You call it a win. As the sun begins to lean westward, a group of actors gathers for the Passion of Osiris. You've seen this play every year. It never gets old. Set murders Osiris. Isis weeps. Horus seeks vengeance. Magic resurrects a god. The actor playing Set wears a crude boar mask and howls like someone stepped on his foot. The crowd laughs, then boos. The man bows with theatrical exaggeration. A child throws a fig. By nightfall, fires bloom along the riverbank like red lotus petals. Families huddle close, sharing lentils and stories. Songs start. A man plays the lyre. Another woman sings a lullaby in a language no one understands anymore. You lie back on the grass. The stars blink down. Same stars as always. The same ones that watched over Khufu and Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and the countless names that never made it into scrolls. You wonder if the gods still live up there, or if they've gone elsewhere. Off to tend new civilizations, leaving yours on autopilot. You don't feel holy. You feel full, drowsy, wrapped in dust and sound and sticky honey. Maybe that's the point. Not to achieve enlightenment, not to see the god's face, but to sit beneath the stars, feeling like you belong to something bigger. The chants return in your memory. Soft now, distant. You don't remember the words, but you remember the feeling. And that, tonight, is enough. You're not supposed to be in the tomb. Let's start with that. You're not a thief, not a grave robber, not even a particularly brave person. You're an apprentice stonemason, a boy with calloused palms, dust in your nose, and very clear instructions to wait near the entrance. Instructions given by your uncle. Instructions you fully intended to follow. But the corridor was cool, and the light from your torch shimmered on the painted walls like reflections in water, like movement, like invitation. So you walked, just a few steps at first, then a few more. The silence was soft, not threatening, like fabric muffling your footsteps. The air, cooler than outside, carried the smell of stone and age and distant cedar resin. And the walls, they told stories, colorful, intricate, alive. A noble hunting birds with throwing sticks in a papyrus thicket, a feast beneath a fig tree, perfumed women offering flowers and laughter, cows, boats, servants, prayers, gods walking among the living, as though death were merely another kind of festival. You're not supposed to be here, but how could anyone resist? You move slowly, whispering apologies under your breath, just in case someone or something is listening. You don't want to offend. You just want to see. And now you're deeper than you intended, farther than safe. Not literally surrounded by the dead, but it sure feels that way. You feel watched, not by ghosts, but by the paintings, the statues, the sealed jars lined along the floor, labeled in perfect script. They hold organs. You know that. The liver, the lungs, the stomach, the heart, maybe, unless it's left inside the body for judgment. Depends on the dynasty. A chill climbs your spine. You walk slower. Eventually, you reach a painted doorway. It shows Anubis, jackal-headed and sleek, crouched beside a mummy. He's adjusting the wrappings with astonishing gentleness, like a mother tucking in a child. There's no malice in his painted eyes, only duty. You remember something a priest once said, Anubis doesn't judge, he only guides. The scales do the judging, the feather decides. You breathe in, push the door open, and step into the burial chamber. It's unfinished. No coffin, just a carved niche where the sarcophagus will go, waiting patiently like everything else in Egypt, waiting for the proper rituals, the proper words, the proper time. The walls here are quieter, less color, but one wall holds a line of ushabti, servant figurines, carved in pale faience, each with tiny tools in their crossed arms. They are meant to come alive in the afterlife, to serve the dead. You wonder if they're jealous of the living. You kneel to study one up close. Its nose is slightly crooked, like yours. You imagine it waking up, yawning, handing you a broom. Time to clean eternity, it might say. You laugh, just once, just under your breath, and then you freeze, because at the far wall, near the floor, there's something strange. A panel, small, crude, almost invisible in the gloom. Not part of the decoration, not symmetrical, definitely not official. Someone tried to seal it, poorly. You step closer. Historians still argue whether Egypt's tombs were always looted from outside, or if sometimes the thieves came from within. Priests, guards, carpenters, not out of malice perhaps, but desperation. Gold has a gravity. It bends ethics. You crouch, you peer in. At first, nothing, just stale air and dust. Then, a glint, a sliver of gold, a painted eye. You lean closer, closer. Then, hey! You jump, smashing your head on the lintel above. Your vision sparks. You spin around. It's your uncle. Didn't I say wait outside? He growls. You mumble an apology, cheeks red, temples throbbing. He sighs, rubs his brow. Just don't touch anything. And whatever you saw, you didn't see. You nod, furiously, sincerely. He returns to patching cracked plaster with a mixture of lime and sand, muttering about humidity and shoddy ceiling. You linger at the doorway, staring at the panel. Your torch flickers. You swear you hear something behind the wall. Or maybe it's just your pulse. You help carry the tools back when the work is done. The sun outside slaps your eyes like punishment. You squint, blinking against the brightness. You try not to look guilty, but part of you still feels the shadows on your back. At home, you can't stop thinking about the glint. You take a clay pot, turn it upside down, and scratch a crude outline into its base. Just a faint sketch of the burial chamber. A dot where the panel was. Nothing too specific, just enough to remember. And that night, you dream. Of course you do. You dream the panel opens. Stone crumbles softly. Something crawls out. Not gold, not bones, just eyes. Watching. Familiar, but ancient. Curious, but endless. The eyes don't blink. They don't move. They just wait. You wake with a start, drenched in sweat. You whisper a prayer. Not to Anubis, not to Osiris, just to whom it may concern. Egyptian tombs are more than graves. They are machines, designed to protect, to punish, to preserve. They feed the soul with offerings, trap intruders in mazes of false doors and trick corridors. You once heard of a tomb with 20 fake chambers and a pit filled with sand that swallows footsteps. Another was cursed, etched so deeply into the wall that even after 2,000 years, the warning still bites. May your name be erased from every mouth. That's worse than death, because in Egypt, death is expected. But to be forgotten, that's the real end. The next morning, you sweep the workshop floor with a new reverence. You look at every crack in the wall, every shadow in the corners. You listen for breath that isn't yours. And sometimes, just sometimes, you think you hear the Ushabti whisper. Waiting. You're finally allowed to watch the scribes. You've passed them often. Those elusive men hunched like cranes over scrolls, lips pursed in quiet judgment, fingers permanently ink-stained like they've bled hieroglyphs for years. They rarely speak. When they do, their voices land like the ends of stories, calm, dry, final. They seem to float above the noise of daily life, observing, recording, deciding what matters. You never thought you'd get close. But today, you're carrying a basket of figs and honey cakes, payment for a legal scroll, a land lease involving boundary stones, barley yields, and someone's very stubborn goat. You don't know the details, you're just the errand boy. Still, you knock. The door creaks open. Warm air spills out, thick with oil, ink, dried reeds, and something else. The smell of decision. It smells like permanence. A man looks up. He doesn't speak, just tilts his head toward a stone shelf where scrolls lie curled like sleeping snakes. You set the basket down, and then you linger. He doesn't stop you, so you step farther in. The space feels like a temple. Not because it's grand. It's not. Just a low room of mud brick and palm beam rafters. But there's a hush in here, a sacred silence. Even the light filters through like it's afraid to interrupt. And everywhere, there's writing. On the walls, on fragments of pottery, on palm ribs and flattened papyrus, some curled with age, others still wet with ink. There are tall scrolls of law, wide scrolls of maps, thin ledgers listing debts down to the last lentil. Some pieces are practice tablets covered in childlike squiggles. Others look like they could summon the sun. You inch closer. At one long, low table, a man dips his brush into a split palette, red in one half, black in the other. His reed pen floats over papyrus like a dragonfly on a pond. He draws a curve, then another, a vulture, a loaf, a snake, and suddenly, the air holds a name. It is alive. You didn't realize you were holding your breath. Because this isn't just writing. This is power. In Egypt, to write a name is to preserve it. To ink a spell is to make it real. To record a law is to change a life. The gods may carve destinies in the stars. But here, the scribes carve in ink. Historians still debate how many could read or write. Some say only the elite, priests, royal aides, temple scribes. Others argue merchants and soldiers often knew enough to sign receipts or draft orders. But you know this much. When a scribe speaks, overseers fall silent. You ask a question. Timidly, he looks at you, blinks, then hands you something. A broken shard of pottery, ostrakhan, practice surface for novices and tired scribes alike. You hold it with both hands like it might crumble. The man gestures toward a pot of ink. Try, he says. Your fingers tremble as you pick up the reed brush. You remember watching your brother draw in dust as a child. Suns with too many rays, fish that looked like bread. You try now to make something correct. You draw 3 ripples, then a loaf, a reed, a horned viper, water, life, name, wrath. The symbols bleed together. They're clumsy, tilted, a bit sad. The scribe examines it, then nods. It speaks. You almost drop the brush. The rest of the afternoon unfolds like a dream. You sit, unnoticed, watching them work. A legal document about a cow dispute is being copied neatly 3 times. One version for each party. One for the temple archive. The dispute is ridiculous. The landowner claims the cow gave birth on his land. Therefore, the calf belongs to him. The tenant insists the cow has lived with him for 6 months, fed from his stores, slept under his thatch. The birth was a coincidence. No one argues. The scribe records. Ink, not opinion. Later, the scroll will be read aloud before the village kenbet, a tribunal of elders, priests, and respected men. There are no lawyers, just testimony, written and spoken, and whatever mood the gods are in that day. You ask if the gods can read. The scribe chuckles. They wrote first. You'll be thinking about that for weeks. As the day winds on, you notice more. The little details. A love poem scratched onto a scrap of limestone, half faded. I wish I were the linen on your skin, or the water in your mouth. You commit it to memory, just in case. You hear gossip too. A senior scribe sighs over being assigned grain audits. Again. I studied under the chief astronomer. I used to map the stars. Now I count onions. Another mutters about a rival who married his way into the pharaoh's library. You smile politely. But you're not listening to the politics. Not really. You're listening to the ink, to the brush against reed, the soft scrape of papyrus being unrolled, the murmured counting of lines, the hiss of a wax seal being pressed by stone. These sounds are sacred. At one point, someone drops a scroll. Everyone freezes. Then, someone laughs, just softly. The tension dissolves. And for a moment, these ink-fingered men feel human. That night, when you return home, your little brother asks, "Did you write a curse?" You shake your head. He pouts. You lie awake, tracing symbols in the air, one after the other. You realize something terrifying, something beautiful. Writing doesn't just record truth. It decides what truth is. No one will remember how the man shouted about the calf, or how his hands trembled, or how the other man flared his nostrils and glared, but they will read the scroll and believe it forever, because the ink doesn't fade and scrolls don't argue. And that is both power and danger. You fall asleep with your fingers still smudged, and you dream of words that never die. You've always feared the gods, not the loud, shining ones carved in stone or sung in hymns, the towering lords of temples, the ones whose names fill papyrus scrolls and echo through the halls of power. Not Ra blazing in the sky, not Osiris judging the dead. No, not those. It's the quiet ones that haunt you, the small gods, the ones with painted smiles on faded plaster, tucked above kitchen doorways or beneath beds, the ones who hide in broom closets, in cracks in the wall, in the oil lamp that flickers too long without wind, the ones who don't need prayers to know your thoughts. Like Bez. You've seen him. Short, squat, lion-faced, tongue out, pot-bellied and barefoot. At first, you laughed. Everyone does. He looks like a drunk uncle dressed for a festival, grinning, wild-eyed, crowned in feathers. But then, you see a woman in labor clutch his image, like it's the only rope holding her to life. You see a soldier brush his fingers against a carved bees before marching toward the borderlands. You see your mother, normally stern and rational, whisper his name under her breath while lighting the fire for supper. And suddenly, he's not funny anymore. Fear doesn't always wear grandeur. Sometimes it wears a grin and stands at the foot of your bed while you sleep. Your family has a shrine, small, unremarkable, just a cracked clay dish set on a windowsill, blackened at the edges with incense smoke. It's dedicated to Taweret, the hippo goddess, swollen with motherhood, crocodile back, lion paws, wide eyes that never blink. Every morning, your mother lights a sliver of incense and offers a cup of water or a crumb of bread. She murmurs the same words each time, low and rhythmic, in a dialect you don't quite understand. You asked once what they meant. "They're not for you," she said. "They're for her." You stopped asking, but you never forget the day she forgot. Once, just once, she skipped the offering. She was tired, or distracted, or angry. You don't remember. That afternoon, your brother fell from the fig tree and shattered his arm. The bone bent wrong for months. Your mother didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply cleaned the shrine with salt water that night and whispered her apology over and over. She hasn't missed a day since. Historians still argue. Were these rituals symbolic, merely cultural? Or did they come from something deeper, older, impossible to name? A way of holding on to order in a world that slips so easily into chaos? You don't know, but you've seen things. Things that don't feel like coincidence. A statue that sweated blood-red streaks during the high flood. A lizard that refused to leave an altar for 7 days and nights. A woman who walked backward through the village for a full hour after dreaming of a cobra in her kitchen. You once saw a priestess speak words that made no sense. Her eyes rolled back, foam at her mouth, the flood rising outside the temple steps. When she collapsed, the rain stopped. Coincidence? You hope so. But you're not willing to bet your soul on it. And then there's magic. You're told not to call it that. Magic is crude, foreign. The proper word is Heka, divine power, sacred force, the breath of the gods, shaped by will and word. Everyone uses it. Healers whisper it over wounds. Midwives draw it in chalk beneath birthing mats. Embalmers stitch it into linen with symbols no one else can read. Even scribes, those men of ink and straight backs, they know. You once saw one write a protection spell for a boatman, folded it 7 times. wax sealed. Keeps the crocodiles bored, he joked, then tucked it into the boat's prow. You asked him if it worked. He only raised an eyebrow. Do you want to not have one? You didn't. Some wear their protections, like necklaces, scarabs, eyes, little copper shapes strung together with prayers. Others bury theirs. You've heard whispers of women planting curses beneath fig trees, a blend of roots, spit, blood, and salt wrapped in black linen. Just to make someone forget you, one said, half smiling. You didn't ask who. And then there are the execration texts, real curses. You've seen one, a name etched into a wax figure, then the figure stabbed with pins, burnt, and crushed beneath a stone. Symbolic, someone told you. But the man whose name it bore lost all 3 sons in a year, one to fever, one to a fall, one simply vanished. You try not to think about it, but Egypt doesn't let you forget. Because here, luck is law, and fate is fabric. Everything is connected. Land, name, gods, time. Every choice leaves a trace. Every gesture echoes. Every silence counts. And tonight, you dream. You dream of a temple, empty, dusty, its columns broken, its roof cracked. But the shadows move as if someone, or something, is still walking there. You step inside. The air tastes like copper, like old blood and old coins. And in the center of the room, there's a figure. Not monstrous, not divine, just tall, familiar. They hold something, a scroll, a name, your name. You wake before they speak. Your breath is a stutter, your pulse a war drum. You whisper a prayer, uncertain, directionless, trembling. Not to any god in particular, just to whom it may concern. At dawn, you burn a sprig of myrrh from your mother's altar. You bow your head. You don't know the words. You don't need to. Because in Egypt, belief isn't always required, only behavior. You don't have to understand. You don't have to explain. You just have to behave. The first time you see a body prepared for the afterlife, it doesn't look holy. It looks quiet. Too quiet. You stand in the shadows of the embalming workshop, breathing through your mouth because the air is heavy with things you can't name. Burnt resin, cedar oil, dried herbs, and the faint iron tang of time itself. There's a low chant coming from the corner, but no one is paying attention to the words. Everyone is too busy watching the still form on the table. It was a woman once. Now, she's something else. Not yet a corpse. Not yet a god. She's becoming. The embalmers move like dancers. Silent, synchronized. Each one knows their part. One washes the body with palm wine, muttering. Another sharpens tools on a slab of stone worn smooth by centuries. Another prepares the natron, a salt that dries flesh, purifies it, removes everything unnecessary, even decay, even smell. You're just here to assist. You hold the linens, you carry the jars. You're not supposed to ask questions. But how could you not? How could you not stare at the way the body is gently turned, each limb handled, as if it might break? Again? How could you not notice how the embalmers never meet her eyes, even when they sew them shut with fine linen thread? They begin with the head, a long hook, inserted through the nostril, a sharp twist. You turn away. The sound is worse than the act. A wet, slurping, cracking sound that makes your stomach twist. Someone once joked that the gods could hear you scream through your nose. Now you wonder if it's true. They drain the brain first, then the organs, carefully, one by one. Liver, stomach, intestines, lungs, the heart? That depends. If she was righteous, it stays. If not, well, Amit is always hungry. Amit, the devourer, crocodile head, lion body, hippo haunches, a goddess of consequence. She doesn't forgive. She doesn't forget. If your heart weighs more than the feather of truth, she eats it, and your soul dies again. You glance at the heart. It's still inside. You exhale. The organs are rinsed in palm wine and packed into canopic jars, each guarded by a son of Horus. You recognize them now. Human, baboon, falcon, jackal. You never thought pottery could be frightening. Then the wrapping begins. Linen strips soaked in oils, resins, sometimes even gold dust if the family is rich. Every layer comes with a prayer, a spell, a binding. Sometimes the embalmers write directly onto the linen, black ink with looping hieroglyphs, curling like vines up the body's limbs. Your job? The fingers. Each digit is wrapped individually, thumb to pinky, not too tight, not too loose. Your hands shake the first time. You're terrified of breaking her, of insulting the gods. But the lead embalmer, older than dust and twice as serious, places a steadying hand on your shoulder. Treat her like your mother, he says, but braver. You don't speak again for the rest of the session. The body is now a form of art, a sacred puzzle. You watch as they place amulets between the layers, a scarab over the heart, a jed pillar down the spine, an eye of Horus beneath each foot, protection, strength, sight. Even in death, no one walks alone. The priests enter. Their voices rise in chants you barely understand, but you feel them, deep, resonant, humming in your ribs like the low strings of a harp. One holds a tool shaped like a miniature hoe. He brushes it against her lips, the opening of the mouth, so she may speak in the afterlife, taste food, smell incense, sing. You wonder what her first words will be. You wonder if she'll forgive those who wept too little or too late. The final touch is the mask, gold, inlaid with lapis and obsidian. It's not her face, not exactly. It's the version of her the gods will recognize, idealized, perfected, unblemished by life or fear or illness. The transformation is complete. She is now a traveler, bound for fields of reeds where no one hungers, where every harvest succeeds, where lovers return, where mothers wait. The burial procession begins before dawn. The streets are lined with silence. Children hold their breath. Stray dogs lower their heads. You walk behind the coffin, feeling the weight of the moment with every step. Someone wails. Another sings. You just walk. The tomb is small, but painted. Inside, the walls bloom with color. Offerings, gods, the weighing of the heart, boats sailing the underworld. Every inch a story, every symbol a roadmap. She won't be alone. None of us are. You help place the coffin inside the sarcophagus. The lid slides shut. Dust floats in the air like gold. You step outside into the light, blinking. And something strange happens. You feel proud, not because you mattered, but because you witnessed something that did. That night, you dream of her, not as a mummy, but as a woman. She walks beside a river made of starlight, head high, arms open, feet bare and unafraid. She turns to you and smiles. You wake with tears on your face and the scent of cedar on your pillow. You don't tell anyone. Some things are meant only for the soul. You never thought grain could be beautiful. But here you are, ankle deep in barley, watching sunlight catch the husks like they're made of gold leaf. Every grain is smooth, warm, alive with meaning. You rake your fingers through them and listen to the soft hiss of abundance. Then someone coughs behind you, and reality returns. You're in the granary, A hulking adobe structure that smells like sweat, mice, old straw, and the fear of miscounting. It's your third day here, and your body already aches in places you didn't know had names. You're not here by choice, of course. You laughed too loudly at the wrong priest's sandals. Look like duck feet in linen. And were swiftly reassigned from temple murals to counting sacks of emmer, like penance. At first, you thought it was a punishment. Now you're not so sure. Because what you've come to realize is this: Egypt runs on grain. Not gods, not gold, not glory. Grain. It feeds the workers. It fuels the priests. It fills the scrolls of scribes, scribbled with careful tallies and bartered debts. A sack of barley here equals a month of labor. 2 sacks? 1 goat. A sack and a half? 1 night with a midwife who can keep secrets. You're learning the language of the land, not written in ink or stone, but measured in weight and silence. The scribes sit nearby, cross-legged under woven canopies, eyes narrowed behind wooden boards marked with chalk. They do not smile. They do not speak unless required. They observe. Every sack you weigh, they mark. Every miscount, they frown. You drop 1. The silence is absolute. Then, a soft sigh. 1 scribe scribbles something extra on his ostrakhan. You don't ask what. You know better now. Historians still argue how centralized this system truly was. Some claim Pharaoh controlled every seed. Others believe the towns held quiet barter markets, slipping beneath the state's open hand. But you know this much. When a single sack disappears, someone suffers. Sometimes it's a child. Sometimes it's you. You learn to watch and to fear. One afternoon, a worker, older than most, tries to pocket a fistful of wheat. Just a handful for his daughter, he mumbles later. She's sick. His wife hasn't bled in months, but it doesn't matter. They catch him. No whip, no shout, just banishment from the granary line. He will starve. You look at your hands and wonder what line you'd cross for someone you love. That night, you sit by the riverbank and listen to frogs calling in the dark. You trace tiny grains in your palm, crushing them one by one. Each one took months of sun, water, labor, and yet here you are, grinding them into nothing, just because you can, because you are angry, because you are afraid, because even a sack of barley holds power over the poor. The scribe who caught the old man sits beside you. You flinch. He hands you a fig. Grain feeds the body, he says. But memory, that feeds the soul. You don't understand, not fully, but you nod, and the fig tastes like forgiveness. The next morning, you wake earlier than required. You sweep the granary before others arrive. You reorganize the sack rows. You don't know why. Maybe penance, maybe defiance. But when the scribes arrive, one of them sets a single date on your mat. A thank you, or a test. You eat it anyway. Later that week, a scribe lets you dip a brush into ink and write the symbol for abundance on a record scroll. It feels like holding lightning. You don't laugh this time. You bow and whisper the word aloud as though it could become real again. You don't belong in Thebes. That's your first thought when the royal courier hands you the scroll. Wax seal still warm, pressed with a cartouche you're not allowed to pronounce. You smell it before you open it. Fresh papyrus, official ink, something sharp and unfamiliar. You're being summoned to the necropolis. You try to hide your shock behind a respectful nod, but your mouth still feels like chalk. Someone nearby jokes that it must be a mistake. that some priest must have tripped over your name in the wrong ledger. You laugh with them. But deep inside, something stirs, something old. The journey to Thebes takes 3 days. 3 days of dust in your throat and silence in your gut. The river is a black ribbon beside you, winding like a spine through the kingdom. You pass villages that smell like cooking lentils and grief. You pass tombs that no one dares name anymore. And when you arrive, when you see Thebes sprawled out like a dream too rich for waking, you forget how to breathe. Obelisks, like spears piercing the blue. Temples, so massive they feel like lies. And the necropolis. It waits in the cliffs, in silence like a god with its mouth shut. You are assigned to Tomb 52. The workers call it the Nameless King. The foreman says the name has been erased deliberately to protect the pharaoh's soul from curses, theft, or memory itself. No one knows who he is, only that the tomb must be finished before the next season's flood, or the gods will be displeased. You're not here to carve. You're here to paint. The stars, ceiling stars. Everyone must be painted in lapis and gold, set against deep blue like the night sky over a world that no longer exists. Each star is a prayer, a compass, a promise. As you paint, you wonder if the king will lie awake beneath your work, gazing upward, wondering if the afterlife will be warm or cold, whether his enemies were buried higher than him, whether his name, forgotten now, will ever rise again in a whisper. One day, while applying gold dust to a star's edge, you feel something, a presence. You turn, no one, just the flicker of a torch, the echo of footfalls that aren't there. It happens again and again. A mason tells you he saw a woman in white standing at the tomb entrance at dusk. A guard swears the stones shifted during the night. You say nothing, but you start dreaming of staircases that lead nowhere, of painted eyes that follow you when you're awake, of the sound of breath behind stone. Historians still argue whether the tomb curses were superstitions or psychological echoes, symptoms of overwork and shadow. But when your brush begins to tremble for no reason, when a star you painted fades by morning, you begin to believe in something. You don't call it a curse. You call it memory, because this tomb remembers everything. Every hammer, every lie, every drop of sweat that wasn't supposed to fall here. And you are part of it now. When the final stone is placed, sealing the king inside, no trumpet sounds, no blessing. Just silence so thick it hums. You walk away with a scroll of grain rations, a new set of sandals, and a name no one will write down. You return home changed. You speak less. You eat slower. And at night, when you close your eyes, you still see that deep indigo ceiling, still smell the cold stone, still hear the rustle of a cloak that wasn't yours. You are not cursed. But you are no longer alone. You once painted stars for the dead, and now they shine behind your eyelids. Every time you sleep, the desert cools. The sun that once scorched the backs of workers now slips behind the limestone cliffs, casting everything in soft indigo and gold. Shadows stretch long and slow. The Nile hums in the distance, gentle now, like a lullaby whispered from another world. And you, dust still clinging to your hands, the scent of crushed myrrh and sun-warmed linen still caught in your clothes. You sit in the quiet. Your body remembers the weight of tools, the ache of repetition, the reverence that came with silence in the tomb. But your spirit remembers something else. The stars above flicker one by one, not in a rush, but in rhythm, like someone is lighting tiny oil lamps across the sky to guide your thoughts home. You know those constellations now. You painted them, touched them, gave them shape on the ceiling of a king's forever sleep. He will never know your name. And yet, he will lie beneath your stars. That's Egypt, a place where greatness doesn't always wear a crown, where eternity is stitched by calloused fingers, whispered prayers, and hands that never get written into scrolls, where your smallness is not insignificance, but thread in a divine tapestry. Invisible to most, but essential to the pattern. You lie back. The earth is still warm. The wind runs cool fingers through your hair. Somewhere, an owl calls, low and patient. You listen to the rustling palms, the dry rattle of distant reeds, and it sounds like stories moving across the land. Stories you helped shape. You remember carrying jars of paint into the tomb, balanced carefully like offerings. You remember the quiet of the burial chamber, broken only by the soft breath of the scribe beside you. You remember the hush that fell when the last stone sealed the entrance, and the way no one dared speak, as if even words might wake the dead. That stillness lives in you now. You've been part of something bigger than a village, a name, a single life. You've touched time, worked beneath it, painted it into walls, carved it into doors, watched it rise as steam from hot resin, and fall again as dust through sunbeams. And maybe, just maybe, that's what it means to live well, to leave something behind, even if it's just a single brick placed true, a prayer murmured over a stranger, a lotus drawn with care on the wall of a tomb no one else will see. Because in Egypt, the soul lives on when the name is spoken. But what no one tells you is this: the soul also lingers in the quiet work, in the unseen hours, in the dreams. So now, as you pull your blanket to your chin, as your breath slows and your body sinks heavier into the mattress, think not of what was missing. Think not of the greatness you didn't grasp, but of the world you helped carry, the gods you served in silence, the legacy carved not in stone, but in rest. You were part of something eternal, and tonight, eternity wraps around you, like linen, like dusk, like love. Close your eyes, child of the Nile. Let the river of time take you gently. You are safe now. You are remembered. You are home. Good night.